UFC 331 will take place on September 19th in Los Angeles, California, and in the main event, UFC flyweight champion Joshua Van will defend the title against the man from whom he took the title, former champion Alejandro Pantoja. We last saw Joshua Van in action in May at UFC 328, where he defended the title against Tatsuro Taira and won the fight by fifth round knockout. We last saw Pantoja in action against Van in December of last year, where he suffered that freak elbow injury and lost his title in just 26 seconds. I think Joshua Van's strategy in this fight will be to keep this fight on the feet and break Pantoja with the body shots and eventually go to the head and get the knockout. Alejandro Pantoja will look to run his grappling game and take the back and choke Van out. That's his MO. He's one of the best at taking the back and getting in the rear naked choke. Joshua Van showed some great takedown defense and submission defense in his last fight against Tatsuro Taira. So if I have to lean towards someone at this point, I think it'll be Van. Van has been constantly improving all through his career. He's a completely different fighter from what we saw against Zalgas Zamagulov all those years back. Alejandro Pantoja is 37 years old. He's taking on a fighter who's way more in his prime, 25-year-old Joshua Van, who is making improvements in leaps and bounds. And we'll see how Pantoja does coming back from that injury. From what I can gather, that injury wasn't as bad as it looked when it first happened. I saw training footage of Pantoja a few weeks after the injury, so maybe he didn't get a surgery. I don't think he's been too open about it, and neither should he be, because that gives his opponents a target to go after in his fights. So we'll see what happens. But at this moment, I'm leaning towards the current flyweight champion Joshua Van. In the co-main event, Arman Tsarukyan is taking on Mauricio Hufi. 5 rounds in the lightweight division, and I've seen some people express their disappointment over it not being Charles Olivera versus Arman Tsarukyan and acting as if this is just some random lightweight they've put against Arman. This is Mauricio Hufi we are talking about, and they're also complaining about why are we losing one prospect or the other. If Arman loses to Hufi or if Hufi loses to Arman, one of them go to the back of the queue. These are not just some random lightweights. They are top 10 in the world. You can't protect them. They have to fight each other at some point. And the winner of this fight is definitely going to fight for the lightweight title next. They might do Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje in the meantime. From what I've read on Twitter, I feel the reason for Charles Oliveira's not being in this match is because his teammate Alan Nascimento just passed away, so he was not ready to get to training camp just yet, which is completely understandable in my view. You have to be in the right mindset to take on such a dangerous matchup in Arman Tsarukyan. And if Hufi wins this fight, he is going to be one of the most popular fighters in the UFC. If Arman wins this fight, it's going to be a great name in his resume against a dangerous fighter who's coming off wins over Rafael Fiziev and Michael Chandler at the White House. So Hufi's already a known fighter for competing on that White House card against Chandler. And I think strategy-wise, Arman Tsarukyan will of course look to run his grappling game. He's probably one of the best fighters at getting takedowns in the UFC lightweight division. And Hufi will look to keep this fight on the feet, stuff those takedowns, and box Tsarukyan up, use his kicks as well. And if I have to lean towards someone, I think it'll be Arman Tsarukyan, just because Hufi has shown that takedown weakness in his game in that Benoit Saint Denis fight. And I think it's going to be safe to say that Arman Tsarukyan is a better grappler than Saint Denis, but Hufi has been improving. He has been training with Alexander Volkanovski. So this is a really tough matchup for Arman. I don't understand the logic behind the disappointment, because this is the UFC lightweight division. It's not a fucking joke. And this is a dangerous matchup for Arman. I don't think this is like, no fight in the UFC at this level is a foregone conclusion. Anyone can pull it off, and Hufi is very, very dangerous. We saw how he beat Rafael Fiziev, and you just saw how well Rafael Fiziev did against Manuel Torres. So that win has aged really well. So we'll see what happens. But very exciting matchup. Arman Tsarukyan, Mauricio Hufi, 5 rounds in the lightweight division. Now moving down the card, Renato Moicano versus Brian Ortega. Interesting fight. They had booked this fight earlier, but they eventually booked Renato Moicano versus Chris Duncan. which Moicano won. He dominated that fight. He even dropped Duncan, and Brian Ortega looked pretty bad in his last fight against Aljamain Sterling. Got dominated for all 5 rounds. And if I have to lean towards someone in this fight, I feel it's Renato Moicano. I think he can even take Brian Ortega down and beat him up there. There'll be a strength advantage for Moicano as well. We have heard a lot of his teammates at American Top Team talk about how powerful and strong he is in the grappling positions. We've seen him implement it as well. He beat the shit out of Benoit Saint Denis on the ground, beat up Jalen Turner on the ground as well, dominated Drew Dober with the grappling. And I think these are all stronger, better opponents than Brian Ortega, at least at lightweight. Brian Ortega's only recent win has been over Yair Rodriguez, which is not the best staged win, actually. Yair Rodriguez has been very inactive, though he is booked for a matchup against Gene Silva right now, but he hasn't fought for a long time. And Brian Ortega also lost to Yair before that. He suffered that injury. So Brian Ortega has been really hit and miss in his career, got beaten up by Volkanovski and Max in his title fights. So we'd see what happens. The guy has been sounding really like he suffered some brain damage in his last few interviews. That's all I can say. Moving on. Patricio Pitbull versus Ho Choi. So I think Patricio Pitbull is ranked number 15. So this gives the Korean Superboy Ho Choi a chance to move into the rankings. Ho Choi is not a boy anymore. He's, I think, 35 years old already. But he has been looking great since he came back to the UFC after serving time in the South Korean military. He got a win over Daniel Santos. I think beat Nate Landwehr prior to that. So I think he should beat 40-year-old Patricio Pitbull at this point, who has suffered a few losses in the UFC. He lost to Aaron Pico pretty badly in his last fight, got dominated, and the momentum is on Duo Choi's side. So we'll see what happens. Patricio Pitbull could pull it off. I think Duo Choi is a way bigger featherweight as well. I think size will be a problem. Patricio Pitbull looks like he could move down to bantamweight actually, but he's too old for that. Moving on, Charles Jourdain versus Marlon Vera. I mean, this gives Charles Jourdain a chance to move into the rankings. Marlon Vera is still ranked in bantamweight. I have no idea how. Who has he beaten really? To be in the rankings, there are better fighters in my view at bantamweight who could be ranked, but I think Charles Jourdain should win this fight. I think Kyler Phillips is a better fighter than Marlon Vera at this point, but he wasn't ranked, so Charles Jourdain is not in the rankings, and Charles Jourdain beat Kyler Phillips pretty easily, though he didn't look good in that fight either, I must say. But I think Marlon Vera has just lost a step completely. I think he made a ton of money for that Sean O'Malley fight and a few fights before that. He was kind of like a rising star in the bantamweight division, and now he just doesn't have that hunger anymore. You see him losing fights consistently, and he just lets the fights get away from him. But he's so tough, he doesn't get knocked out, and that's about it. So moving on, Ryan Gandra versus Ozzie Diaz. Ryan Gandra is coming off that knockout win over Zachary Reese. He had knocked out an opponent in the contender series prior to that as well. Ozzie Diaz lost to Oteba Gautier in his last fight, and I think he's going to lose by knockout to Ryan Gandra in this fight as well. I think Ozzie Diaz has lost a few more fights in the UFC by knockout. He is primed to get KO'd, I suppose. So I can see it happening again. Ryan Gandra has shit technique, but he's really, really scarily powerful. So I got Ryan Gandra beating Ozzie Diaz actually. Casey O'Neill was Eduardo Mora. I'm not going to talk about this crap. Edmond Shahbazyan versus Bruno Ferreira. Edmond Shahbazyan's coming off that comparative 29-28 loss to Brendan Allen. Bruno Ferreira has lost his last two fights to Ikram Liskarov and Gregory Rodriguez. He lost to Gregory via vicious KO. I think this is his third fight in very quick succession. But I think Edmond Shahbazyan should win this fight. He got that experience against the top of the division against Brendan Allen. Looked pretty good, I suppose. If he had shown a little bit more urgency in that fight, he could have actually beaten Allen and been ranked in the top 5 or 10 at this point, which is insane. Insane. Anyhow, I got Edmond winning this fight. Tai Tuivasa versus Robelis Despaigne. Tai Tuivasa has lost 7 fights in a row. I have no fucking idea why they still keep this guy around. Initially, he was losing to really good comp like Derek Lewis. He beat Derek Lewis. He lost to Cyril Gahn, he lost to Volkov, but he has been losing to some schmucks lately. The last guy who beat him came in on short notice and whooped him up. Robelis Despaigne lost to Austin Lane in his first run in the UFC. They cut him and now he's back. So if Robelis Despaigne has to get a win in the UFC, this is the chance, I guess. So Tai Tuivasa versus Robelis Despaigne, inconsequential matchup in the heavyweight division. Gable Steveson versus Sean Sharaf. So I mean, I've been seeing a lot of posts on Twitter. I don't know if it's a joke or not. Maybe these are Gable Steveson fanboys, but they're already talking about putting Gable Steveson against top 15 opponents like Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov, and Waldo Cortez Acosta, Curtis Blades. And I absolutely disagree with that because Gable Steveson is 4-0 right now. In his last fight against Elisha Ellison, he looked good. He looked good, but he looked very a little unsure of himself against an Elisha Ellison level of opponent. So I wonder how he's going to look against a guy like Curtis Blades. I feel like Waldo Cortez Acosta or a Curtis Blades would really put one on his chin right now. And even if he can scrape by a win, he's going to take a lot of damage. So give him 3 or 4 fights against these unranked level of opponents like Sean Sharaf, who is an experienced fighter in the UFC. He had that crazy fight against Steven Aspland. So Sean Sharaf is an experienced fighter in the UFC. Let Gable Steveson build himself up a little bit, and we'll see what happens. But it's good to have Gable Steveson on this fight. I guess this card needs some name value. Gable Steveson brings that. They'll probably put him on the main card as well. Ivo Baraniewski versus Alonzo Menifield. This is going to be a guaranteed knockout. I have no doubt about that. Ivo Baraniewski does nothing but win his fights by knockout. Alonzo Menifield is also coming off a big knockout win over Zhang Minyang. Looked great in that fight. Looked very composed, which he hasn't looked in his few fights. He got knocked out in 7 seconds by Carlos Solberg very famously. So we'll see what happens. I think Ivo Baraniewski is the favorite to win this fight, I suppose, because he hasn't lost, unlike Alonzo Menifield, who's lost a bunch. So, Ivo Baraniewski, I like this guy. Legendary Polish power is back in the UFC in a different form. And I can't wait for this one. It's going to be a good one. Giga Chikadze versus Joe Anderson Brito. I think Giga Chikadze is done, and Joe Anderson Brito still in the UFC winning fights. Had a great performance against Jordan Levitt in his last fight. I think before that he beat some Australian guy on short notice. Joe Anderson Brito still in the UFC winning fights. He didn't look good against Pat Sabatini, but Pat Sabatini has that tendency to make people look pretty bad if he can implement his game plan against them. So I don't really hold that against Brito. So this is an interesting matchup in the flyweight division, and this could lead to a ranked fight for the winner, especially if it's Brito. And Michael Aswell Jr. versus Ju Sang Yu is also there on the card. Both of these guys have done nothing but lose in the UFC as far as I remember. Michael Aswell Jr. of course lost to Luke Riley. He lost to Bolaji Oki. Ju Sang Yu lost by KO to Daniel Santos. But I guess they want him on the card because they also have Ho Choi at the top of the card. So they wanted another Korean prospect and they wanted some Korean viewership as well. So that's it for the fights on this card. Really exciting matchups, especially in the main and co-main event. I can't wait for this card. It's in a few weeks' time. So let me know what you all think. Are you all happy with these matchups, especially Tsarukyan versus Hoofy? What would you like to see instead of these fights? Do you think there can be something added to this card which can make it even better? Let me know what you all think. I'll see you all soon. Peace.